Hello and welcome to Early Education in the Age of AI. I'm Jodie Clark from the empowerededucatoronline.com, and I'm delighted that you've joined me for another episode today. I've spent over 30 years in the early childhood sector, and the last 2 years I've been figuring out how AI can actually help us spend less time on documentation or admin paperwork and instead more time engaging in play-based learning with the children. And I'm here now to share what I've learned with you so you can just leap straight into using AI with confidence. In this podcast, you're not going to get any techie jargon, just simple strategies and tips that work for the realities of today's early education professional, no matter what your role or interest in early ed is. So pop in the earbuds, grab your cuppa, and let's explore together how AI can become your helpful teaching assistant. In this episode, we're going to talk about the big scary thing in the storage room, or maybe for some of us, it feels more like the he who must not be named of early childhood education. That fear that using artificial intelligence is going to make us lazy. I see it in the comments on social media. I hear it in conversations. There's this really deep-seated concern, it seems, that if we use AI in our work, we're somehow cheating. We're taking a shortcut, or we're devaluing that hard-learned knowledge that we've built over years of study and, of course, on-the-floor experience with the children as well. But in this episode, I want to challenge that a little. I want to argue that using the right kind of AI doesn't make you a lazy educator. It makes you a more efficient, more focused, and ultimately a more impactful one. So we're going to tackle what I call the three biggest objections that I hear every day throughout my membership and in my Facebook group and other educators that I just know personally. And I want to reframe them a little bit, not as roadblocks, but as signposts that show us the way that we can use this technology smartly and ethically, and also improve our own skills in this area as we go through. So let's break them down. The first one that I often hear, you might have used this for yourself, especially from directors and leaders in centers, early learning centers, is this. If my team, or some version of this, if my team uses AI, they'll become de-skilled. They won't learn the fundamentals or use the knowledge that they should already have from their study. And I really want to validate that fear because it comes from a real place. Many of you listening have probably played with, a generic large language model tool like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or some of the others that I've mentioned in other episodes. And you might have given it a simple prompt like, give me a learning story about a child playing with blocks. And then you've gotten back a boring, disconnected, and frankly, a little bit useless response. And when we see that, it can be really easy to think this technology has no place in our sector, or it's something that isn't going to be helpful to educators in any way. But here's the thing that we first need to understand. AI use does not just equate to models like ChatGPT. That's why you have to put a little bit of learning, a little bit of upskilling into this process, because the problem isn't the technology itself. It's more the design of the tool you're using and also how you are using those tools. So we've talked before in other episodes about how to make your prompts that you give to an AI tool more effective. But for some people, what I'm hearing is that you don't have time to learn how to do prompting in this way, or you don't want to, you just want to get in, use the AI tool, get the information back. So this sets up a bit of a quandary, because think of the generic AI, like say ChatGPT, for example, which is probably the one you've heard the most about in the news, as a sort of massive unorganized library. It's true that somewhere in that library, there are books about, say, the early years learning framework and child development, But that AI doesn't automatically know which book to open for you. It doesn't know which page to turn to or how to connect the ideas professionally for your specific situation. So it doesn't know which early childhood setting you're working in, what type you're working in, your service philosophy and values, or even the children that you're planning for. And the pressure then is 100% on you to be the expert librarian. And that means knowing exactly what to ask for, how to ask for it, and how to piece that information together once you get it back. So I want to flip that a little bit. What if the AI tool was designed by an educator who understands the realities of early childhood education across the different roles and service types, someone who knows the latest frameworks and standards that should apply? So what I'm saying is, what if instead of starting with that blank page type tool, it was instead a scaffold that could support your entire cycle of planning and care? And this is really the principle that I've built my entire Empowered Educator AI toolkit of tools on. And it's about turning a blank page into more purposeful, reflective conversations that guide you through that expert process. So in other episodes, you might remember that I've talked about when I say how to prompt effectively, and I've given you lots of prompts as well to try. And I always say, personalize them with your own information. So fill in the blanks, so to speak. And I want you to put in the age group of the children and all of that sort of information. But I know that this can be difficult and it can be time consuming to learn how to do this, and it takes practice. I've been practicing for the last few years now, and that's why I'm getting a better handle on how we need to prompt to get the information we need as early education professionals. Take the documentation cycle, for example. A really common challenge is when we're trying to turn a few of our quickly scribbled notes into more of a professionally worded, say, anecdotal observation. It could be any observation type, really. And a model like ChatGPT or Claude, I quite often use as well, can easily miss the point or use the wrong style of language if you haven't first used those prompts that I was just saying, if you haven't prompted it effectively for what you need, but also understand how to keep the conversation flowing. I've talked about that as well when we talk about prompting. Prompting is one piece of the puzzle, but then you also need to know that you need to enter into a collaborative back and forth sort of conversation. You don't want to just settle for asking one question and expect that the AI, the big ones like ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini, who do know all of this information, they have that library of information, but they don't know how to make it specific for you at that stage unless you understand how to make that happen and how to keep that conversation going until you do get the information that you need. But the difference in a purpose-built tool, like I've created with the anecdotal observation writer, for example, this is just an AI smart form that I create for our members. It acts as a scaffold, and that's what I want it to act as. It prompts you for the essential pieces instead of you having to think about how you prompt the AI. I've already done that in the background for you. So it gives you the objective notes. It'll ask you for the context of the observation or where it was. Most importantly, it'll ask for your initial interpretation of what you know about that child and what made it stand out to you, those sort of things. And by separating these steps, it's then going to guide you to think like an experienced professional who has the important knowledge of the child and their interests, their learning goals, their family life, etc., which of course you have, but the AI needs to know all of this stuff that's in your head and understand, what it is that you're wanting to ensure that the final response that you get is clear, objective, and meaningful, as well as being personalized to your needs, so you're not wasting too much time. It's the same with the Learning Story Writer smart form. If you write an engaging story that makes learning visible, that can be a real skill. And I know a lot of people have struggled with learning stories just from the comments that I've received in some of our chats. And instead of just asking for the learning story based on a few sentences about what you saw, which is what I see a lot of educators doing, and then being disappointed with the results, a smart form tool is going to, the way I've created it is that I wanted it to guide you through that story arc. And so it's asking you for some information as you go, like what the child said, what you thought about that, what was the most meaningful moment that you thought was in there. And it helps you find the story within a couple of sentences, within that moment. And this sort of scaffolding applies to extending the learning and forward planning too, which is another important step of our cycle, because we've all been there. You have a great observation, but then what do you do with it? And as I'm always mentioning, it's just a waste of your time if you've taken a great observation but then you do nothing with that information. That's been a waste of your time. You need to take it that one step further. You need to ask yourself, what's next? I like to think of this as climbing the rungs of a documentation ladder, if you need something to visualize. Instead of trying to jump to the top in one go, which is obviously overwhelming, a good process lets you climb that step by step. And that's why we call the planning cycle steps. The smart films are designed to be those rungs for you, though. And this AI-empowered approach isn't just about completing a whole lot of random documents. It's not what we're aiming for. It's about supporting the entire cycle of professional practice and then helping you also make the connections and understand those connections between each step that's going to support your future planning and make your forward planning a whole lot easier, because you've gathered that information from your observation and you've taken it to the next step and then the next step after that. For example, it could start with, say, a spark of an idea using a tool like the Loose Parts Play Spark or the Everyday Learning Sparks that I've created for 0 to 2 years to get inspiration. And that's going to lead you to an observation once we've actually had the play and you've observed the play, which, say, you could document with the anecdotal observation writer. And from there, go to the next step. Use the learning extension planner to decide what's next. And then finally, you could use all of that information, copy it in, and use the weekly program plan creator that's going to pull it all together for you. So it's an integrated system that's designed to support you at every stage or rung of the ladder. And that can just be a little bit harder to do when you are using the larger models, because they don't have all of that specific context and it's not broken up into steps like that. Perhaps you only need one of those tools at that moment, but by breaking this sort of documentation into these focus steps, you're going to provide more detailed, thoughtful information at each stage, and this allows the AI to give you, in return, a far more personalized and effective plan. So it's not de-skilling you, it's actually making the planning cycle more visible for you and achievable as well. And what I find is that as you're going through those steps, it really helps educators to see the connections, see how things link together and why you're writing an observation, so that it's not a waste of your time, because you can then use it to continue through each of these steps. Now, I want to move on. The second concern is a big one, and it's all about authenticity. If an educator uses AI, it's not their authentic voice writing that observation or that email or whatever it is. Now, I love this point because it gets right to the core of our professional identity as in early education. And my response is gentle but important. Are we talking about your authentic voice, so an educator's authentic voice, or are we talking about their exhausted, rushed, I've got 5 minutes before my break ends voice or planning time ends? I recently read a great post, I think it was on LinkedIn, that made an interesting comparison to Martin Luther King Jr. He did the thinking. He shaped the vision for his I Have a Dream speech that we're all well aware of. but he had assistants who helped him put together the final words. The vision was his, the ownership was his, but the final product was a collaboration. And when I like to think we can think of AI in the same way, as a co-pilot or a professional partner, educational assistant. So you provide that critical thinking, which is really, really important. Say the observation, the knowledge of the child, and the vision for the communication. And the AI is going to help you put it together professionally. It's especially good if you're worried about how to word things. And this is about finding those right words to match your professional intent. So let's look at communication with families, for example. At the end of a long day, writing, even if you're using an app or something similar, writing a meaningful daily update for every child or group as a whole is tough. And smart form tools like the My Day Snapshot or Our Day in Review solves this. That's why I created them. I've used these as hard copies for many, many years throughout family daycare, long day care, occasional care. I've used them in a whole lot of different roles. And then I thought, how can I shift that a little so I can put that knowledge of what works into a smart form tool that's going to guide you through and only take you seconds to fill out and give you back something in return. So once upon a time where we used to have to print them out and write it in and do all of that, now all I've done is take that same strategy that I've always used, so hands-on, old school if you want to call it that, and turn that into something a little bit more digital and faster to provide. So you provide the quick essential notes, the child's mood, maybe a one-sentence highlight, care details. I take you through a few little simple questions, and what your answers is the authentic core of the message then. So what's going to happen is the little AI helpers I've created in the background, just pretend they're real. The tool then translates that information into a parent-friendly summary that explains the learning behind the play in a way that parents and carers not trained in early childhood theory and development can easily understand. So it finds your professional voice when you're tired and you need to get back to the children and you just need to finish this off. I have many blog posts where I've written about using the My Day Snapshot and the Our Day forms. I've had them in template packs, in PDFs and things. I want you to know that this is something that I've used myself for many years, and I know the questions on there and how to shift them a little bit so that parents find it a useful tool. And again, it's not just wasting your precious time either. So ultimately, this sort of professional voice is what allows us to build stronger partnerships with families. So when a parent reads a summary from say, for example, the Playful Learning Planner that I created, that doesn't just say, we painted today, but it explains that through painting, the children were exploring, say, concepts of color mixing, developing the fine motor control, their need for writing, and then you are advocating for the value of your work. When parents ask that question about, what could he have possibly learnt today? He's only been playing in the sandpit. You can have all of this information feeding back to the parent in a way that they will understand. So it makes the learning more visible, but also honors the parent or the carer as a partner in their child's early learning as well. And in those blog posts, I might link that up in the show notes for you. They're older blog posts, but they go into the sorts of things that I used to write on these forms, because I always think it's so much more valuable than just writing an outcome number or something like we painted today. You want to explain what else was happening there, just like I did there through painting. The children were exploring concepts, include some of their conversations or their own voices that came into it. And it just makes for a much more useful and engaging summary that you'll probably find if you're one of those people that often say they never read what I write anyway. I don't know why I do it. It's a waste of time. If you're emailing something like this across to them and they understand it without needing a degree in the early years learning framework or child development, you are much more likely to get that collaboration and interaction with them as well. And the same is true for those more, shall we say, challenging communication moments that you probably find yourself procrastinating on more than you'd like because you're unsure how to confidently but respectfully approach a topic like late fees and things like that, especially when I was working in family daycare, running my own family daycare. The fees thing is always a big one. It's a tricky topic, same as dropping off early or picking up late. So these sort of, I call them tricky challenges, tricky situations. And that's why I created a smart form and I called it, it doesn't sound professional, but tricky conversation email drafter. And I think that tells you all you need to know, because I wanted to remove the uncertainty, that overthinking that you get, and the time that's often wasted on writing these sorts of emails. Because if you're anything like me, you sit down, you know you've got to do it. You want to get paid on time, or perhaps if you're in a centre, the management is pushing that you need to clear out these old fees, and maybe you've got to tell the family that the child can't come back until the fees are paid, and you sit there not wanting or not knowing where to start with it. So I wanted to create something that sort of helped you with that uncertainty. So all you're doing is providing the objective facts, the child's name or nickname, so we're keeping privacy important there. And also important, selecting a tone for the AI to use. So warm and supportive tone creates a very different result from firm and clear or assertive. And this is going to help you address sensitive topics with more professionalism and confidence. So your authentic judgment is in every one of those inputs that you give the form. The AI in the back, the AI helper in the back, think of it behind like the Wizard of Oz and the wizard behind the curtain. She is just handling the stressful part of finding those perfect words you need and giving you a ready to edit draft that you can then confidently make your own. So I'm not saying use this tool, copy it to the clipboard and put it straight into your email and send it out. You will always, as I say in every episode, it's really important that you always go through and add your own touch and edit to ensure that it is something that you would say, and perhaps, make a few tweaks, but it really, stops that procrastination. And this can even apply to another area that we quite often procrastinate on, especially at this time of year, halfway through the year, and again at the end of the year, is writing our summative assessments. And that's why I did create the summative assessment writer. So all of these tools I create because I would have used them. I would find them helpful because I'm picking out the things that challenged me the most, whether it was in family daycare, outside school hours care, early learning centres, as an educator or as a director. So I'm taking that information that the generic AI like ChatGPT doesn't have. I would have to put that in and explain it every time that I wanted to prompt it to get these sort of results. But I know what we find challenging because I've been there and walked in your shoes as well. So this is my way of breaking things into just smaller little tasks and steps, things that I know can challenge us as early childhood professionals. And so the idea of this smart form is to guide you step by step through the process. So it's prompting for your own information, your perspectives, your current knowledge that's drawn from all of I like to call them the little puzzle pieces of information. So all your documentation that you've previously gathered through. It could be work samples, observations, conversations with the child. Perhaps you've done portfolios and any other documentation pieces. But most importantly, together with what you've already stored in your head about, the child's journey, their strengths, their personality, family input, all this stuff. I know you hold it in your head. And the AI's job is to then take all those little bit of puzzle pieces of information and then weave it all into a more holistic, strengths-based progress summary that is aligned with your framework and the learning outcomes that are specified by you. So it doesn't mean you just have to, if you're an Australian educator, of course, you'll be using the Early Years Learning Framework. If you're based in the UK, you're using the EYFS. It doesn't matter what part of the world you're in, how you tell the AI, you just say as part of your answering questions, what framework do you follow or what should this align with? And that's where you're going to give your input. So your voice isn't lost. It's just clarified and amplified or boosted. And it's then more meaningful for the parent or carer as well, as I've included in the AI prompts, so for the AI helper, the wizard behind the curtain, to specifically write in a way that people without early education or framework expertise will easily understand. So just like I was talking about before, and then they'll understand more about the child's individual learning journey and also setting future learning goals together. It becomes more of a collaborative process between you and the family for each child. And of course, you can show evidence of that, all while taking you less time than you actually spend now writing your assessments. This brings me to how I respond to education professionals almost fearfully telling me sometimes something like, if they use a tool to link to the Early Years Learning Framework or whatever, insert whatever framework you follow, they'll never actually learn the framework for themselves. Now, this is sort of like the calculator argument. You've probably heard that one being mentioned once or twice in the news or educational forums and on social media, as it keeps getting tossed around at the moment as an example. But there's a reason for that. It actually is a very valid one. And it helps us picture the process. Back in the day, let's say my day, as I don't want to assume you are as ancient as me, we did long division by hand. And in my case, that wasn't very well at all. Maths, as I may have mentioned in other episodes, has never been my thing, if I'm being very honest. But now we use calculators even they have gone by the way. So we have them on our computers and our devices now, digital calculators. There's a calculator for everything if you go on the internet. And I remember the time we were told that at those times we couldn't take them into exams, and even when we used them, we had to show the working out to explain how we got there. They were seen as a terrible tool that was turning our brain to mush because we wouldn't be able to use maths anymore. We wouldn't know how to do it. We used to only navigate by the stars. Well, I'm not that old, so not me, but now we use GPS. And sometimes I don't know whether that's better or not. They get very annoyed with you, don't they? This isn't laziness though. It's progress. It's about automating the more mechanical part of a task so we can simply free up our brain power for that more higher order thinking that only we can do in the way that we need to do it. So let me put it another way. Think about all the mechanical tasks that soak up our time and energy as educators. Say, for example, searching through a 68-page PDF document to find the exact wording for outcome 1.2 is a mechanical task. Trying to remember the exact definition of a theorist to include in your reflection is a mechanical task. Even formatting your weekly planner with the correct headings, ensuring consistent spacing, making it look professional is a mechanical task. The real professional work, the part that requires your unique human and educational expertise, is analysing the observation in the first place, understanding the child behind the learning, which is really important, connecting it to a relevant theory, and then most importantly, deciding what to do next. That's where our professional judgment comes right to the forefront, but we can collaborate with AI to boost that, to strengthen that. A well-designed AI tool isn't just going to give you the answer. It acts as a mentor. So what do I mean by that? This is where we really need to be critical consumers of all the AI tools flooding the internet. And I say that as someone who has created my own AI tools, of course, and I'm telling you about them in this episode. But I want you to be careful because there are many basic tools coming out now that promise a really quick win. They'll say, give me a theme and I'll give you a weekly plan. And yes, you will get that plan back and might even list some early years learning framework outcome numbers if you were able to say that that was, what you want it to map to. But that's a mechanical answer. It's generic. It's what the other person who wanted that theme is getting that exact same plan. It doesn't know your children, your available resources, or your unique teaching philosophy. And that's why I hear from directors at the moment who are really worried about AI use because they see their educators submitting generic, impersonal documentation that doesn't reflect the high quality practice that they expect as part of that role. So those tools don't help you learn. They don't build your confidence and they don't lead to better outcomes for children. You might get lucky with a few of them. I'm not saying they're still not helpful, but as a long-term solution, I don't believe so. A truly effective tool doesn't just ask you for one piece of information. It guides you up the rungs of that ladder, and each rung should be a thoughtful, specific question that can draw out your professional knowledge. So we don't always know what questions to ask ourselves. Reflection can be a big thing, a bit of a challenge. We don't, when we're trying to analyze learning or decide on our extension activities, we don't always know what is the next step. And smart forms like I've been creating are designed to be that ladder for you, asking you for the details that matter, even when you don't know the questions to ask yourself, and ensuring that that final response that you get back, it really is a true reflection of your practice and, the children in your care. And that's why I actually call my early years learning framework outcome matcher. I think I changed the name to connector because I didn't like matcher, but I call it behind the scenes my x-ray tool because you only need to answer a few questions, but I've made sure that they're really specific questions because all the detail is in the back behind the curtain in the prompt that I've already given those AI helpers back there with the wizard, gathering your information and then analyzing it in the background according to instructions that I've specified, specifically for the needs of early childhood educators, but also for all experience levels. So whether you've just started reading the ELF and wouldn't know your outcome 3.1 from your 5.1, or perhaps you know the basic premise behind each outcome, but you struggle or waste time trying to make those connections to real activities and learning, or even if you're way at the other end of the scale and you've already memorized every outcome, the process is the same on your end. You paste in your observation notes about, say, a child pouring water, and it doesn't just give you back a box checked with outcome 4.2. I really, really don't like those, so I try to avoid that on any of my templates and now AI tools because it shows you how that simple action should also connect. So it's explaining the why as well. So it explains why those links actually exist. It doesn't just give you the answer, like that little box. I've never seen really the understood why we just want to check, why we put that pressure on educators to check off this outcome 1.2 box when it's not helping you understand and learn what are those outcomes and how they connect in your specific circumstances. So I wanted to get around that in a different way. So for example, it might say this links to outcome 1 because the child is demonstrating persistence and a sense of agency as they master a new skill. When you read that why, it helps, it's something clicks. It's not a cheat sheet. I'm not talking about a cheat sheet. It's a professional development tool that is going to strengthen your learning. And it models pedagogical thinking. And over time, you then begin to internalize that process. Your professional lens gets sharper. That's my aim anyway. And you start seeing that scope of learning everywhere. And this applies to leadership as well, as this is so important for those of you in leadership roles who are at the moment possibly trying to support a team that might be overwhelmed or reluctant about some of these steps. So think about how this sort of AI empowered approach could improve your team meetings. Instead of just asking any reflections or what's been happening, what are we doing in this area, you can become prepared. So use a smart form like the team reflection prompt creator, or obviously prompts of your own with one of the other models, ChatGPT, etc., to generate meaningful questions for you about a specific topic, like our approach to risky play. Or use the sustainability audit and action planner to run a simple collaborative audit with your team. You could consider your quality improvement planning and updates. The QIP Evidence Spark tool isn't just for you to use by itself. It's a tool for, connected leadership. So instead of the QIP feeling like a big scary document that always lives in your office, taunting you, you could take a big goal like embed sustainability and put it into the tool and instantly get a simple checklist of evidence ideas. So it's using AI in this step-by-step fashion. You can then take that list to your team meeting and say, this week, can we all try to capture just one piece of evidence for this goal? It could be a photo of the worm farm, a note from a parent about waste-free lunchboxes, quick observation. You get the idea. It makes the QIP a living collaborative project, not a top-down chore. And for preparing for assessment and ratings visit, which I know stresses many that might be listening today, the mock assessor simulator sounds fancy, but I simply created that to become your team's confidence builder. So you can use the realistic questions that it'll give you back to facilitate a supportive discussion in a team meeting, or even if you're doing it one-on-one with educators. So frame it sort of as, let's practice this together. Here's a question an assessor might ask about our indoor-outdoor program. What are we most proud of? What stories would we share? So we're turning the process, we're demystifying it. We're turning it into more of an empowering process rather than a scary process. We want to empower educators to speak confidently about what they do each day and turn what feels like a test into more of a celebration of your team's great work. So a bit of a mindset shift there, but the tools can really help you to achieve that. And they shouldn't be, I don't mean them to be a cheat for you. They can be used as a scaffold for your entire team's professional growth. So using AI in this sort of focused way, it's not going to just save you time. It gives you a structure to have deeper, more effective professional conversations that empower every member of your team, no matter what their experience level is, to contribute, even if they're starting out a little bit reluctantly. And that's going to happen. So when we reframe these fears, we can see a new picture emerge. The question isn't, should we use AI? The question is, how can we use AI to strengthen our work, honor our professional knowledge, and give us back our most precious resource, which is time? Some might say sanity, but let's just stick with time. The solution is to stop only using these generic blank page tools unless you're already learning from people like me who can share the prompts with you. There's podcasts starting to emerge and blog posts and things, but start using purpose-built AI tools like the smart forms I've been telling you about that are designed to be our professional partners. And this is really the reason that I've spent the last 2 years deep into exploring artificial intelligence and attending training and getting new qualifications on responsible AI use, because over that I've tested countless different ways to use AI. And, to be honest, I've seen a lot of what doesn't work. I've seen the generic one-size-fits-all approach, or those that are more aimed at primary teachers or higher education teachers, and these don't work for our specific early education sector. And it really is making it more of an easy decision, which we don't want, for many services to tell their educators they must not use AI to help with writing their documentation, for example. And that's why I'm really so passionate about creating a different path, an alternative path, a way to use this technology that both respects and supports our profession and our skills and expertise as early education professionals. We don't want to say to people you can't use it at all just because we haven't provided the training and the knowledge and the tools that help them to use it more effectively. This is a new area. It's a new skill. It's something that people are already using. I can guarantee you that educators at your service are already using AI in some form. So why not ensure that they can do it meaningfully out in the open? You can all chat about it. You can all see what's working for some, what's not working for others, and then go from there. And that brings me to a really important point. I do absolutely believe that my smart forms and AI chat assistants are the best, most efficient and most professional way to use AI in our sector, or I wouldn't be telling you about them. But I also know that not everyone has the budget for a paid tool, and that's okay. My commitment has always been to empower all educators. For the last 12 years, I've done that over on my website, The Empowered Educator Online. And that's why on this podcast and on the blog, I will always commit to sharing free strategies, prompt examples, downloadable PDFs, and tips that are going to help you get better results for things like your prompts from those generic tools like ChatGPT, or when I say generic, I mean the larger models, and Gemini and Claude and Perplexity. Because teaching you these sort of foundational skills is really important. And I know that it can be hard to access this kind of knowledge and training at the moment in our sector. So for those of you who do want to save time, who want to skip the trial and error, and who want a tool that already has my 30 years of experience built into it, then that's what the AI Empowered Educators membership is for. So if you want to take that path, that's what it's there for. But my goal was to ensure with creating this information for you is that we can ensure we don't lose our authentic voice, our critical thinking skills, or that personalization that is at the core of what we do each day in early education. I want to reassure you that a huge amount of work and also testing for every single smart form I create has gone into that back-end AI behind the curtain. I call them AI helpers because I just think it's a friendlier way to explain how every form has a different set of skills and specifications and that behind it. But they're all following my instructions to give you the most professional results, and they're doing it in just seconds. So the specific guiding questions that the forms ask you are the very same questions that I would actually use if I was sitting beside you as a one-on-one consultant or mentor. The difference is you now have that mentorship on demand without the hefty consultant fee. So it's about making expert support accessible to every educator in a way that makes sense to them. So the tools I've been mentioning today throughout the episode are just a few examples from the full library that you get as a member, and you get unlimited use each day of those forms. There's no limit for you. And it covers everything from daily planning. There's tools for observation, leadership, compliance, play ideas, environment ideas. And I've just taken everything that I've learned over the years that I know challenges me in certain areas, like summative assessments, and I've made a tool to make it easier. That's my core purpose. So if you are ready to move from AI frustration to AI empowerment, I really do take great pride in inviting you to see how these tools can change the way that you plan and document, because we need to keep our qualified educators, our passionate educators in the sector at the moment. We're losing so many wonderful people due to overwhelm and paperwork and documentation just being too much or too overwhelming and frustrating. So this is a way we can make a change and get you back to enjoying your job again. And you can explore the entire library of smart forms, including all the ones I've been mentioning, inside the Empowered Educators membership. And as a special thank you for being a listener of this show, this does depend on when you're listening to it, but with the end of financial year 2025 upon us here in Australia at the moment, I've decided I'm going to give you a special discount for podcast listeners. So use the code SMARTPODCAST, all one word, at the checkout before the end of July 2025 using the link that I'll leave you in the show notes, the special link, and you'll get $50 off an annual membership. That's a full year of unlimited access to the entire toolkit plus the entire AI assistance chat team. So if you just want to chat back and forth with a AI assistant, you'll be able to do that as well for less than the cost of a few cups of coffee a month. I'm really excited to share these new tools with you. And if that's not something that you can commit to at the moment, make sure you're going back and listening to some of these episodes, download some of the free tools I've been sharing. And just, if I can give you one big tip, it will be to practice your conversation skills with AI and steer away from those quick win ones and instead focus on learning how to do your prompting, your prompts to the AI tools a little bit more effectively. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for listening in. You'll find all the important links you need in today's show notes, or you can head over to the Early Education in the Age of AI podcast page on the empowereducatoronline.com/AI in Early Education podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a fellow educator. And I'd so appreciate you leaving a quick rating or comment if you have the time to do so, as it helps other educators find the show and lets me know what you'd like to hear more of. Until next time, stay curious and continue exploring new ways that you can collaborate with AI confidently and support play-based learning to give you back valuable time in your day. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.